Good morning, RCG. This is AP, and I wanted to put together a quick little video around using the 1 minute and 5 minute vector for trading futures, specifically ES, and should give you a little bit of insight on how I leverage the vector itself, what I'm looking for, a little bit of insight how I do and manage my risk management. Also, some of the targets that I set, how I leverage some of that additional analysis that's being posted by Big Russell, Milk, Ragav, etc. But we got a lot of great tools, a lot of good data, and I think many of you are leaning on to the vector because it's giving you a signal, and I think that's probably it's the easiest place to start. What I do suggest is that Russell has put together that lovely guide that kind of gives you a overall view of all the different vector setups, right? The side exit, the different variations A, B, and C. Same thing with the tabletop, the failures, right? And then also, after the failure, when that the B or C formation forms, how we can take that as a second entry, right? You might take a stop loss on the first attempt, but then the signal goes green again. You can take that an entry again, right? And with setting proper risk management and having appropriate targets based on some of these levels, right? The great data that you get from the yellow box, the IV walls, the call walls, the put walls, the stuff that you get from OMM, ceiling and floor, right, gives you a good idea where the market's going, right, where it wants to head to. So it gives you a great opportunity to capitalize on profit that's going to offset 2-3 losses with a single win. Let me disable this image really quick, and then we can jump into the vector itself, and we'll focus quickly here on the morning. So I am in this Central Standard Time, so the market for me opens up at 8:30. I did have basically 2 trades this morning, kind of watching the market right now. First, what I'll point out is that, as we opened up above the 5-minute vector, right, we do have a nice bullish trend that was starting to form on the 1 minute, right, on that open, a little bit of that choppiness. We were sitting on a tabletop from pre-market. But what I suggest, especially if you're just starting out, is to let the market settle in the first, 15 to 30 minutes. You're going to have retail jumping in. You have market makers that are repositioning. Things are kind of rebalancing itself. So you're going to get a little bit of choppiness, right, that can potentially, cause you to hit a couple stop losses, right? And then, you're going to start the day on the wrong foot, so it's better to just kind of give it 15 to 20 minutes to kind of settle in and form that proper directional bias movement that we can take a trade with. So my initial first trade, right, I was seeking for the retest of that 5-minute, especially as we were kind of, there was a handful of times that we're breaking below the 1 minute. Milk posted in the chat, right, the probability of a lower low than 56, I believe what it was, 56, 53. Chances of a lower low from that were minuscule, right? So we had an idea that we were really sitting at at that bottom level with very supportive, and that we were likely to have more upside than downside. But we still want to find a proper entry, right? Sometimes we do see that there's impact from outside events, right? Whether it's economical, geopolitical, there's influence, external influence that can impact the market and then mess up our odds. So you still want to try to enter according to where the vector lines up to give you a best opportunity to manage that trade and minimize drawdown, right? Nobody wants to be down $400 or $500, right? Because that's significant risk only to, if you enter at the wrong position of the chart and you limit your upside, then the risk to the reward ratio, is significantly smaller. So for this first trade, right, as I was kind of looking for a retest of the 5, that initial retest and the one I did not take action on, I think this arrow moved on me slightly, but we were below 1 minute, right? And ideally that morning trade, I suggest for anybody starting new and to not get cute and fancy, is to be on the right side of both 1 and 5 to take that trade. Right, starting off. Down the road, right, as you get familiar with the movement, as you start playing with the levels, now you can take an early trade, right, off of 1 or 5, knowing the risk and managing the risk, managing the trade. But until you're very familiar with the vectors, I'd suggest that people start, ensuring that you're on the right side of both. That gives you a strong directional bias and a stronger probability of that trade working out in your favor. Now this initial one I did not take as we were below 1. Then we kind of chopped around, so I was still sort of watching, right? There was still some news to be released this morning, but as the second test came in, there, and here's the arrow, and we started to move above it. I believe what that was, 850. So right here we started to move above it here for that second retest. For me, this was known that the odds of going lower were limited. I did take an entry right here. On this candle up, I believe my entry was slightly, when we were below it, I had an open order at like a little bit, maybe few higher than 56.60, and they did fill. My stop loss was, at that 53. So I was risking, I was taking a little bit of a bigger risk, seeking that 20 points, but the market, looking at the 5 minute, having that movement, having that support, I was willing to risk a little bit more, as there was a higher probability of this trade working out. So as we got above that 1 minute, I did take an entry. Now, as you guys can see here, did I experience a little bit of a drawdown? Yes. I was down about 4 points or so before that trade actually started moving in my direction. And right after that, right, we had that strong reaction and we were moving to test that call wall on the Qs, right? So you can see how I'm starting to piece together some of that external analysis, right, and setting the targets. Now, I knew that I was at least seeking 20 points, so I did have a level on ES that's mapped out where I was seeking to test. Knowing that on average there's always a little bit where you shoot over that zone a bit, but that trade lasted several minutes, maybe less than 10-15 minutes, where we're able to lock in the profit, so that one was successful. But you can see how I leveraged some of that early on patience to identify the right entry. Now, could that entry been a little bit more perfected? Sure. I was more focused on the 5 minute candle. But if you're seeking, a perfection off the 1, waiting a couple more minutes, you probably would have experienced a little bit less drawdown, could have entered on that, confirmation after that additional candle closed above the 1 minute vector. But you guys can see that, I like to work off of 1 and 5 because 1 can create some of that noise, where 5 was giving me the level of confidence that I needed to stay in that trade, right? And given given an ample amount of time for it to run and hit my target. Now looking at the rest of the morning, my second trade that I did take, all right, is this retest of this tabletop. All right, we'll just leave it as that for right now. Now you guys can see down here on the 5 minute, all right, where that second entry for me was. The directional movement is still strong. We got 5 minute is, it's staying flat, very supportive. And the reason I point this out is many people will jump in here, anywhere on this chart because they think they missed the move, right? And they don't, they got FOMO kicking in and they want to take a trade, they want to be in a trade. Well, ideally is that you wait for the next setup, right? If we're moving in bullish direction, right, your next setup is going to be a tabletop. It's going to be that pullback. It's going to be that consolidation before the next leg up, and that's where you want to take an entry. Now, Russell has created this vector, and it's amazing at doing just that, is identifying that area of entry. So as we came in, we tested it, right? And I'd like to have a candle, that initial was break below. I'd like to have a candle close above for an entry. So I waited for that. That entry was, I took it probably slightly a little higher. My entries tend to be just a point or two above the vector, but we're looking at like 56.70 versus 56.69. Where my fill was. But again, what we see right after that is that quick reaction, right, off that level, off the vector. We got that quick reaction, and then we quickly get up to that 10, 15, 20 point take profit area, right? So that's another 20 points. 2 trades, 40 points. I can't ask for much more in the day. I can call my morning a quit here, and I had that confidence because we are in a bullish trend. I think if you guys have been following the chat, I think somebody posted, I don't know if it was Ragab or whoever posted that we were in a bullish convergence. So on the OMM, I suggest you guys look at that tool, especially for floor and ceiling readings, if nothing else. So that piecing all of that together gave me confidence into taking this entry off that tabletop setup, and the trade worked out, right? I think you guys will probably be concerned around taking entries on the downside because the vector has to be inverse. So I'm just gonna just kind of reflect back on a trade that I did take yesterday. So let me see if I can move this chart back. All right, so I think this will do, at least for the purpose of the vector itself. We can see the Sunday session, the Asian session. We gapped down slightly, and then it was a bloodbath, right? Bearish sentiment, definitely moving in that downside direction, anticipating more downside. I think for the right process would have been immediately looking for an entry to take advantage of that downside. But I think the human mentality is, to catch that falling knife and play a reversion. And to be honest, there was a signal. I did play the initial reversion attempt, and it stopped me out. It was not a success. Luckily for me, it stopped me out at break even. But I took an entry, and let me see if I can put an arrow right here. But I did take an entry right there. Yeah, let's see if it's gonna draw it. Okay. Now I'm gonna mess it all up. Okay. Hopefully it stays like that. But I did take an entry right there. We had a side exit, right? And then it came down into testing the vector. I believe, what was that, 56.85. I took an entry at 56.85. I was risking 3 points. So my stop was a lot tighter here, right? Because I'm playing against the trend. And we can see exactly why that trade did not work out, but we can also see why I took the entry and why it potentially could have worked out. So for me, given that it's the Asian session, I'm seeking 10 points, risking 3. Looking for a simple trade Sunday evening. Trying to get to family dinner, so not a whole lot of interest for me to sit there and trade all night. That bounce right off that support, could easily be that 10 points for me. And also I knew my risk, right? I was willing to lose 3. At that point where I took the entry, I did get that initial reaction, right? And I moved my stop loss to break even. I think I needed maybe about 5 more points, right, for that trade to be success, and then it moved back down and stopped me out. After that, right, that's where my mentality shifts, and it's like, okay, well, they definitely don't want to bounce it here. Milk also posted the yellow box. I knew that if there was a loss of that 56, 84, 85 level, that there was more downside to be had. So I'm actually, let me delete this arrow right here. Or actually, I'll make it active. I'll remove this one. I'm not even sure I did the right one. Anyways, ignore that one as my chart's really kind of slowing down. But I did seek an entry for downside, and maybe I can move that arrow, and that's going to kind of clarify things up for you guys. But, in my mind, what I'm doing is I am inversing that vector, right? So I'm looking at it that if you see this formation like that, now it's a tabletop, all right, to the downside for me. You can, during regular RTH session, right, regular trading hours, you can use SPY put that's in the money. That's going to help you with that. But eventually your mind will be able to process and then see that formation just in an inverse state. So as we kind of broke through, right, I'm watching for that. I'm watching for that entry, right, to the downside. And just to reflect back, I mean, here, guys, here's on that on the 5 minute. As you guys see, this is where I took the entry to the upside. We had a little bit of consolidation here and moved in, but this really tells you that we weren't on the right side of the vector, so the probability was pretty low on that actually working out. Now, as I kind of move this chart over so we can see the entry to the downside, I was hoping that arrow was going to pop up here, but it's right here. It's kind of hidden. But as we came in on the 1 minute, I was watching the 5, right? Sentiment bearish bloodbath, whatever you want to call it. We came back through, tested, came back down. Right now, I'm kind of eyeing, and I was waiting really, in my mind, I'm really kind of, I'd like to see, I wanted to see that retest and, then break below again. Um, could have taken an early entry, yes, here, but I was kind of worried about this actually turning into supportive, so I didn't want to get faked out. So I was just kind of patient, sitting on my hands. So then once I saw the second attempt, right, to the upside fail, then I knew this was a great opportunity for downside, right? I had that nice bias. And the other thing that really came into play here is the movement of the vector on the 5, right? In a lot of the upside movements, we see the stair stepping where the vector on the 5 or 1 will actually form the little steps, pushing price up. And this is just inversing, right? So we're forming that down adjustment when we're already below the 5-minute, giving us an opportunity to push that price even lower. So as I saw that, right, I took that entry to the downside. I believe it was roughly around like 50, what was it, 56, 84, 83, 84, something like that. I took that entry, and again, it was a quick reaction after that, right? And I got my 10 points, and I was able to, go and enjoy dinner with my family. Now, you guys can quickly see, if you do take these entries at the right points, there is usually a nice reaction off the vector, right? Where your trade is going to work out a lot sooner than you anticipate, right? And so, while not guaranteed, you are positioning yourself for a quicker success, right? A higher win rate. Did I have a stop loss in place? Yes. And my stop loss was right above that vector. I wasn't willing to risk a whole lot, maybe 3 points again, whatever that was. But, if you follow the rules and if you take entries around the 1 and 5, right, as long as that your analysis is solid in where that direction is heading in overall, and that's why I suggest looking at the 5, your success rate should be a lot higher than that 50%. Honestly, it should be in the 70-80% range, right? And if you have nice risk management set in place, right, even if you go on a tilt and end up getting stopped out 3-4 trades, the next win likely will recover it all, especially during the RTH session where we are aiming for 20 points, right? I will probably follow up with a couple more videos if there is interest around, using the levels, using some of this additional analysis that kind of helps me put together additional confluence in that directional trade that actually helps me kind of analyze how much upside, how much downside, right? Why do I at certain times only seek 10 points, why other times I'm seeking 20, 30 plus. The idea is that I am playing level to level, so that gives us a variance, an opportunity. Can you break on one level and then move through another? Sure, you can. And I'll go into some of those different topics if I do see that there is interest. But, in a nutshell, this is really it. I do suggest that you guys definitely read the guides that Russell and team have put together, learn the setups, and then, the simple thing is just, sticking around, right? If you stick around long enough, it'll start clicking. It did for me. I traded, by myself for a while, with some different people for a while. I've been doing this for a long time. But I do find that, you know, the RCG team is probably the best in the industry of quality of analysis that you get, the quality of the tools, and probably nothing else. You know, I don't see anything else like this in the market, especially with the fractals for those that want to get really into some of the details of the analysis, and then, you know, leverage that to trade different individual stocks and such. I mean, you guys definitely get a great opportunity here to, you know, have a unique edge, right? And, you know, we all know that to be successful trading in this day and age, that you definitely have to have an edge. Otherwise, you just kind of get tossed around by the market until it takes your shoes, your lunch, and everything else that it can. But all right, hope everybody has a great trading week, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.